following video is far-left disinformation minimalising the effects of asylum seekers on Britain. The guy's figures are well out. I'll show the video now and I'll comment as I go along as to why I think the guy's figures are wrong.
You've heard it all before. Politicians screaming invasion. Tabloids splashing pictures of boats across the front page. They use language designed to make you feel like the country's been overwhelmed, that our borders have collapsed and that we're staring down an unprecedented crisis. They want you to be scared. They want you to believe that your way of life is under threat from an endless flood of people. It's a powerful story, and it's a story built on a foundation of distortion. But what if I told you that this entire narrative, this carefully constructed myth, could be dismantled by just one number, a carefully verifiable statistic that completely changes the picture? This is the number they hope you never bother to check, because once you see it, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. That number is 16. Yes, 16. That's how many asylum applications the UK received for every 10,000 people living here in 2024.
Including all immigration, the figure will be 11 times that at 179 people per 10,000.
Let's put that number in context and see why it changes everything. The first and most powerful myth is that the UK has been invaded or flooded. The imagery is deliberate. Waves of people, an unstoppable tide, but the facts, they tell a very different story. In the year ending March 2025, a total of 109,343 people claimed asylum in the UK. In isolation, the number might sound big, but in a country of over 67 million, it represents just 0.16% of the population.
The figure of 109,000 doesn't include the Ukrainian scheme, so that's up to 150,000 once you include them. Also, it doesn't include people coming over on family visas, so that's another 270,000. In total, including student and work visas, well over 1 million people came to the UK last year. Also, remembering that 2024 wasn't a one-off. This is happening year on year on year. And then once they're here, they're having children, their children are having children, and the impact on the UK is astronomical. Since 2008, 13 million people have emigrated to the UK. And since 1979, 1.6 million refugees have claimed asylum in the UK, and only 400,000 of those, roughly, have been made to leave or have left. The Southport killer, as pointed out by the media at the time, wasn't himself a refugee. He was, however, the result of the refugee crisis. If his parents hadn't been allowed to settle here, he wouldn't have been here and the attack wouldn't have happened.
Second myth is that the UK is unfairly shouldering the world's refugee burden. You hear it all the time, don't you? We can't take any more. The data shows this is just plain wrong. Now, according to the UNHCR's 2024 Global Trends Report, there were an estimated 123.2 million forcibly displaced people worldwide. The overwhelming majority ain't in wealthy Western countries. 2/3 of refugees are hosted in countries right next door to their own. In fact, 73% of all refugees are in low to middle income countries. Countries like Turkey and Iran each host millions. To say the UK is shouldering the burden is like someone who was asked to carry a single shopping bag complaining about doing all the heavy lifting, while their neighbours are next door moving pianos. So where does the UK actually stand? Well, the UK ranked 17th in Europe for asylum applicants per person. The UK had 16 applicants per 10,000 people. The EU average was 22. In the league table of European nations, the UK isn't even in the top half. The idea of Britain is uniquely overwhelmed is fiction.
Different countries have got different ways of counting the number of refugees. Some countries, like Britain, only include the main applicant. Other countries include the main applicant plus their spouse, and then other countries include children as well. even if the figures were right and most countries were taking in more refugees than Britain, it still wouldn't mean that it's right. If someone was to get punched in the face and report it to the police, and the police were to say, well, don't worry about it because a lot of people have been beaten up a lot worse than you, it'd be an absolute laughingstock. Just because other people have had it worse doesn't mean that one person getting beaten up isn't a bad thing. And it's exactly the same with the refugee crisis. If other countries are taking far too many refugees, then they should stop. They should cut back the amount of refugees that they take. It doesn't justify us having to take loads of refugees.
This is perhaps the most corrosive myth that people arriving on small boats are illegal immigrants. This ignores international law. The article of the 1951 Refugee Convention, which the UK co-wrote, is crystal clear. It states countries shouldn't penalise refugees for how they enter as long as they are fleeing danger. Think of it this way: you don't fine someone for breaking a window to escape a burning house. The priority is saving their life, not fussing over how they got out. Seeking asylum is a human right.
As long as they are genuinely fleeing danger. But at what point does someone stop being someone who's fleeing danger and become an economic migrant? The analogy of breaking a window to save your life or the life of a loved one when a house is on fire is actually a good example. If a house is on fire and someone breaks a window to escape or to save the life of a loved one, then that's perfectly justified. But how long can they carry on breaking windows? Can they go all the way down the street breaking windows? Can they still be breaking windows the next day, long after the fire's out? Can they still be breaking the windows a week, a month, or a year later? Which is exactly the problem we've got with these illegal migrants who may have entered the first country they entered, fleeing for safety, fleeing danger, but then the next country they enter, they're an illegal immigrant, and the country after that, and the country after that. And when they get to Britain, they are illegal immigrants. Admittedly, the first country they enter, they may be fleeing danger, but by the time they get to Britain, they're not. They've got no more right to come to Britain fleeing danger than someone has to break a window a year after there was a fire at their house. People fleeing a country should go to another country that is similar both culturally and financially, rather than going to the richest country they think they can get away with getting in, or the country they think are given the most benefits. If your car was stolen and you was fully comp insured, your insurance company would provide you enough money to buy a similar car. They wouldn't provide you with enough money to buy a car that's worth 4 times as much money. And it's the same with the asylum system. People that are coming here that haven't paid into our system and they're expecting to live in a country that's significantly wealthier than the country they've left and have a higher standard of living than they had in the country they left. They're economic migrants and not refugees.
Now, recent UK laws have tried to block claims for irregular arrivals, but that doesn't change international obligations. And the proof that these claims are legitimate, it's in the Home Office's own data. The success rate for asylum claims is incredibly high. In the year ending March 2025, the grant rate for people from Sudan was 99%. For Syria, 98%, and for Eritrea, 86%. These ain't people rolling the dice for a better life. The UK's own system is acting as a fact checker, verifying their stories are tragically true.
The high success rate doesn't mean that they're genuine asylum seekers. Firstly, most of them burn their paperwork or dump their paperwork as soon as they arrive in the UK. So there's nothing really to check. And the people checking them land up just taking what they say at face value. Then you've got also people that have committed terrible crimes in other countries, but due to the fact that that country still has the death penalty or torture, we're not allowed to send them back there. They get to remain here. You've got people that have started a family here, and it's their right to a family life. They're allowed to stay here, which trumps our right to family lives and right not to be burgled or raped or whatever else like that. You've got people that come here either as pretend homosexuals or actually are homosexual, and the country that they come from doesn't allow people to be homosexual, or in some cases just doesn't allow people to promote homosexuality. But like I said, someone could have committed terrible crimes, but just because they wouldn't necessarily have a fair trial, or they would get tortured or could possibly face the death penalty, they get away with not being extradited, when these are absolutely terrible people that are going to commit terrible crimes in Britain, or stand a good chance of committing terrible crimes in Britain.
So if the numbers ain't an invasion and the burden isn't unique, what's the real problem? The crisis is a deliberately broken system. The system has become a clogged pipe. The water, the applications, is coming at a manageable rate, but the pipe is so narrow that it's creating a huge, expensive backup. As of March 2025, there was a backlog of nearly 110,000 people waiting for an initial decision. This backlog cost the taxpayer £5.4 billion in the last financial year. A huge chunk of that, £3 billion, was spent on hotels. This is the cost of the overflow, a flood caused not by the water but by the blockage. The obsessive focus on the small number of people arriving by boat is a classic magician's trick. They want you to watch the dramatic gesture of one hand so you don't see what the other is doing, creating a broken system that costs billions. Invasion story serves a political purpose. It manufactures fear, deflects from failure and scapegoats the vulnerable. But it's a narrative built on sand. When you look at the facts, it falls apart. The numbers ain't overwhelming. The burden isn't unique. The claims are, for the most part, genuine.
He claims that asylum seekers are coming at a manageable rate, but there's a backlog because of the system. But then he quotes another figure that I've quoted a few times myself, the fact that there's 123 million displaced people in the world. And if you free up the backlog, if you just start granting asylum to all these people that are coming over, to create safe routes for even more to come over, word's going to get back to these 123 million people, and virtually all of them are going to try and get here. It's not going to free up any backlog. All it's just going to do is create a massive tsunami of third world immigration. If anyone disagrees with anything I've said, please comment below. I try to keep everything as accurate as possible, and I'll gladly apologise if I've made any mistakes and correct any mistakes. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe and press the bell icon, as they say. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. It's been a pleasure as always.